My name is Tyler, and I'm the youth ministry director here. And thank you. And I'll be doing the sermon for today. It's our second week missing Isaac and his family, so we look forward to them coming back. But we're going to be continuing in our Church Works series. So the last couple weeks, does anybody know what we were talking about over the last couple weeks? Giving, we spent 2 weeks on giving. So this week, we are going to be talking about character. Character. So what is character, and, why do we need it? And we're going to be using sort of two main words for character today. Character is one of them, and then Christ-likeness is another one of them. So, character and Christ-likeness. Perfect. It's right there. And so these are the kind of two things we're going to be talking about, and how to grow in them. So what does it look like to grow in these things? We're going to be looking at growing in character and becoming more like Christ. Okay, if we could get the definition of character there, the mental and moral qualities distinctive. Okay, character. So the mental and moral qualities distinctive to an individual. Who would say, by raise of hands, you have like a general idea of like what good character is? General idea. Yeah, okay, I think we all have like a pretty good rough idea about what character is and good character is. Maybe if I could get a couple people to shout out a couple of character traits that would be considered good quality character traits. Honesty, accountability, compassion, respect, trustworthy. Yeah, those are all some really good ones. So there's all these, character traits that we, like honesty and compassion. Compassion, we were learning about that in kids' church a little bit ago, like seeing somebody in need and having it move you to the point where you actually go and help them with that need. So there's all these good character traits that we can have, and it's kind of like a thing in our society right now to be like on the self-improvement journey. So I think we have a picture of like some books. Okay, so here's like some books so you might recognize some of these books. We got, I don't know all of them, but there's Range, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, 12 Rules for Life, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Becoming by Michelle Obama. Okay, so you got all these kinds of books, and you've probably seen a lot of them. There's a lot of books for, improving your character or improving your life or getting your life on track. And some of these I'm actually reading this one right now, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's quite good, but there are a lot of good character traits, and we could just like kind of blindly pick, like, okay, I think this is like a good thing, and I'll maybe like aim for that. And I'll just kind of like grapple through life trying to figure it out. But we're going to be much more specific today about what kind of character we want to be growing in, because it's not just anything, and it's not something that we do on our own. We're talking about Christ likeness, which is becoming more like Jesus. If we could get the next slide up there, I believe it would be there. Yeah, Christ likeness, becoming more like Jesus. So we want to grow in our character, and the reason, we're using that word is because it's something that we can all kind of connect with. Like, okay, we're changing the qualities we have on the inside, and we're becoming better, and we're having better qualities, right? But the aim is to be more like Jesus himself, because Jesus is the ultimate and perfect example of character. Everything he did, in the way that he talked to the people around him, in the way he acted on his own, the way he spent his time, all the things that Jesus did, he did perfectly. And so if we want to know what good character is, we need to look at Jesus. We need to study him carefully. We need to watch what he says. We need to listen to what he says. And so we're going to have this picture later. We're going to think of being a full-time student of Jesus. But first, we're going to read a verse about this. It's in Ephesians. So this is kind of what it's like to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires. Okay, so this is part of the character growth thing. In Ephesians, we're being taught to like put away our old stuff. And we did a message on this like a long time ago, but and then to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. And this is why I chose this verse, is to focus on this part here. The new character that we're supposed to be becoming, the new type of person we're supposed to be becoming, is modeled after Jesus. It's after his likeness, because he's the perfect example, like we were talking about. And so, if we just try to like pick our our favorite person, that might be good. It's good to have like role models. Like, who has a role model? Does anybody have a role model? Like, you could have a role model, and you could follow that person. You could study them. You could be really inspired by them. They could probably teach you a lot. But the problem is like, if you just follow them, you're gonna realize that they're not a perfect hero. They're not a perfect example. They have a lot of flaws of their own that they're working through, and you're gonna pick up some things from them that maybe aren't that great. And so we need to be putting on the new self that God has given us, that's been created after the likeness of God. And because he's the one who has true righteousness and holiness. And those can kind of sound like, I don't know what those words sound like to you, but righteousness can kind of sound like a big word, but it's really it just means right living. So doing the right thing when the opportunity arises. You're doing the right thing. You're living right. And that's according to the way that God has called us to live. And then holiness is, in short, is being set apart and set aside for God's purposes. So the new character that we want to grow into, in short, is doing the right thing, which we're going to have examples of that. And then also like having our life set aside and dedicated to following God and living according to his way. And so these are the kinds of things that we're aiming for. And I was going to break down at the beginning of the message, but the first section here is sort of like, what is character and what is it that we're aiming after? And then the second section is going to be, why should we grow in character? And then the final section is going to be some practical stuff about how we can grow in character. But yeah, so our aim is Jesus. Let's pull up the slide there of, this is perfect. There's a student here. So this is something that is kind of like a helpful mindset. So we know we're aiming for Jesus. We want to be more like him. We want to grow in character and take on qualities of Jesus. How do we do that? And some of you may have heard, like, when you become a Christian or you enter into a relationship with God, you become a disciple. And that can kind of sound like a strange word to us because we don't use it very often. But one of the most common like meanings of that word is it's a student. It's somebody who is a student. And now I chose an example of a particular kind of student because we don't want to be just students who are like getting information, right? But like a full-time student, and I'm going to use the example of like a carpentry student, okay? And so what are some qualities like of a good student? Actually, this is a good question for you guys. What are some qualities of a hardworking student? What would be something good? They study. Robbie. Thorough. Yeah, they look over everything they need to. Adam. Attentive. They're paying attention. Yeah. Punctual, on time, showing up to class. Yeah, so there's all these good qualities of a student. And the point of a student, particularly with a carpentry student, and we can get the picture of the carpentry stuff here, like the point of a student, especially a carpentry student, or somebody training to become a carpenter, is not to just have a whole bunch of information about carpentry in their head. The goal of being a student of carpentry is to become a good carpenter, so that you can actually, apply the knowledge that you've learned, apply the skills that you've learned from your teachers, and actually become a carpenter. Somebody who can craft something beautiful out of wood, somebody who can build a house for somebody, who can use those skills to help and benefit the world around them. And so when we're called to be students of Jesus, we're not called to just study him from afar and get a whole bunch of information about him, but we're actually supposed to follow him so closely and look at him so intently so that we can become more like him. And then in our everyday relationships with the people around us, we can act in a way that is like him, and we can show his love to the people around us, and that is going to change, that is going to change the world around us so much more than ultimately even any of the jobs that we can have. And so this is the kind of mindset that and the kind of life that God calls us to. And I was thinking it when I was preparing for this about how when Jesus calls a lot of his disciples, they all had their professions, and he called them away from that to say, like, this is the new main aim of your life, is to be a student of me and to live following after me. And so I'm not saying at all that that we have to quit our jobs or anything like that, but this call that Jesus gives us when we come into a relationship with him is to make our new primary goal is to be a student of his and a disciple of his and to become more like him. And so we have to, and we're going to learn about this at the end, we have to put a lot of effort and intention into doing that. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Because as you know, like character growth even, it just doesn't happen on its own. And so it takes a lot of intention. Okay, so that's the mindset we have. It's like being a dedicated student. Okay, let's move on to our why section. Why grow in character? What's the importance of growing in character? One of the first reasons is that growing in character is part of being in a relationship with God. When we enter into a relationship with God, that is one of the things that is going to happen, and it's part of being in a relationship with him. And we're going to read in Hebrews about how when we enter into the family of God and we become his children, he disciplines us, and he's going to actually use difficult things in our life to train us to be more like him. And so let's bring up that chapter there, or those verses there from Hebrews. So he says this: endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you are not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. So right off the bat, he's saying, okay, if you are a child of God, the result is that God is going to be disciplining us. He's going to be working through difficult things in our lives to grow us to be more like him. And that's part of being a child of God. And so that's one of the reasons why we are wanting to grow in character. So, and if you're not disciplined, then you're not a legitimate son or daughter. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. And how much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live? Okay, so just giving like an example, and it's everybody has a different experience, but having fathers and they are trying to do, or your parent, they're trying to do their best job to raise you as a child, right? That's sort of most of the time what happens. And he's saying they tried to do their best, and they did some things good, they did some things bad. And but the hope he gives is, he says here in verse 10, they disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for good, or for our good, in order that we may share in his holiness. So he actually points out here that like all parents are flawed and they're not going to raise their kids perfectly. That's sort of a given. But when God disciplines us, when God, maybe he's using a difficult situation in your life, maybe he's just trying to teach you, like I've been experiencing this a lot the last couple weeks, maybe month, like some things in my life that God's been trying to get my attention with and say like, this is something that I'm going to start changing in you. It's something that needs to grow. And sometimes that can be really painful. Sometimes those things are really deep rooted, and like we don't even know how to change them, or we might not want them to change. Like change can be really uncomfortable. And this is really helpful, though, is to understand that God disciplines us for our good. Every time that God is trying to teach us something in our life, every time he's trying to change something in our life, he's not unaware of how difficult it is. He's not doing it because he doesn't like us. He's not putting us through a hard situation because, he doesn't care about us. He actually knows what is best for our life. And it's not the same way that, because our parents, sometimes they are trying to do what's best, but it might not actually be the best. But when God is trying to do something in your life, it actually is for the best. Because he has that information. He knows the kinds of things that we need to grow in. He knows what is perfect, and he knows how to get us there. And so when God is working in your life, trust that he is doing a good thing in your life. And it's so that we may share in his holiness, and we might be more like him. Okay, and now in verse 11, it says this: no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. So it's going to be really difficult, and because we're talking about character growth, and the reality is, if we want to grow in our character, there's going to be some painful things to work through in order to be more like Jesus. And so, the writer here is acknowledging that it's no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. But later on, it's going to produce a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. And so, if you go through this process, if you endure the discipline, if you endure the thing that God is trying to teach you, the result of it is going to be a whole bunch of good and right things for you and the people around you. And I'm not necessarily talking just like success, maybe in the way that the world would think it, like you get a new job, maybe that it might lead to that, or you get more money or something like that. But it's going to produce like a whole bunch of good things in the relationships and the community around you, in the way that you interact with the people around you. And he talks about it bringing peace, peace for those who have been trained by it. Okay, so then he encourages us here to sort of be courageous. He says, therefore, strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees. Make level paths for your feet, so that the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed. And then he ends with this. He says, make every effort to live in peace with everyone and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. Okay, so this is going to lead us into another reason why it's important for us to grow in character. Because he says here that without holiness, if we're not being shaped and formed by God to be more like him and be set apart for him, that people aren't going to see God. So one of the results in allowing God to work in your life is that not only are you going to be able to see God more and know him more and see him working in your life, but the people around you are going to be able to see God more, and they're going to be able to see him working in life. And so it's really important. He says, without holiness, no one will see the Lord. And so, as a church, this is one of our callings. It's to have our lives set aside for a specific purpose, to be his students, to become more like him. And one of the primary goals of that is so that the world around us can actually see Jesus, and they can actually get to know him. They can actually, meet you and think, this person, the way they're treating me, the way they're talking to me, even with everything that's going on in their life, everything that's going on around them, like, this is so different than anything I've ever seen. Like, what is going on here? I want to know more. I want to know more about, how is this person living their life? Like, why are they like this? And then it opens up a gateway and an opportunity to share God with them, and they might have a chance to actually see God in their own life. So it's very important. So yeah, that was the point. Becoming more like Jesus is part of God's plan for how the world will see God. Okay, we're going to shift to one more thing here about why, and we're going to be going through a little bit of a story of, it's from the Christmas Carol, and I know it's not Christmas time, but it's a really good picture, and this is sort of just a picture of like, okay, why is it important? Why is it important that you like go through the hard process of growth? Because when we get to the end, we're gonna see that it's gonna be a choice. You don't have to grow the rest of your life. You're gonna have a choice of whether or not you want to lean towards a life of growth, or if you're gonna just stay the way you are and not strive to be better. And so there's this story in the Christmas Carol. You guys all know the Scrooge, right? He's somebody who has a whole bunch of money, and his money actually isn't really necessarily his problem. The problem that the Scrooge has is that he doesn't care about anybody around him, and he doesn't really have anybody around him that cares about him. And there's this scene, I think we have a picture of the tombstone there. There's this scene that happens in the Christmas Carol where Scrooge, he meets the ghost of Christmas future, and he takes him to his gravestone. So he's looking at his future. This ghost is telling Scrooge, like, this is what your life is going to become. If you keep on going the way that you are, this is what your life is going to end as. Like, your whole life, it's going to add up to this. And he points to, he has this, like, creepy, the ghost has this creepy finger, and he keeps on, like, pointing at this tombstone. And there's no name on it. There's no, benediction. There's no, like, words about how this person lived. There's nobody that he finds out. He comes to the realization that there's nobody that cared about him, and he didn't have anybody that he cared about either. And so he ends his life just because of the way he was living. He was living selfishly. He was greedy. He didn't want to grow. He didn't want to change. And so this ghost says, this is the way your life is going to end. You're going to be alone, and your life is going to amount to nothing in a sense. And the Scrooge, this is where the Scrooge totally, like, changes around. He starts, like, pleading with the ghost, saying, like, is this future set in stone? Is this something, like, is this the way it is going to be, or maybe is it just the way that it might be? Like, is there a chance that if I get back to my life right now and I change, could I have, like, a different outcome? Could it be better than it is? And so Scrooge has this moment where he looks at his life, and he sees that the path that he's going on right now, and for us, maybe it's not a total path to just the wrong way, but the path that Scrooge is going on is going to lead him to, like, a miserable, bitter death is where he's going. And he has this opportunity. He sees that there's a chance that he could take another path that is going to lead to life. And what we find out in the Scrooge story is that that's what he does. When he comes back, he decides to change the way that he lives. He uses his money to help the people around him. And if you remember, there's, like, one of the boys in the family, Tiny Tim. He was sick, and he helped him out, and then that kid got better, and he ended up helping save that family's life. And so for us, we can think about this, and I think we have the next point up on the screen. Your path in life can either be a beacon of hope and light to the people around you, or your life can bring death and misery to the people around you. And we have this choice. And I had earlier, whether or not you decide to follow Jesus and be his student and grow in character, it will have a significant impact on you and the people around you. And it even really changes the course of history. And you might think, like, okay, my actions, they're not that important. Like, It's not going to change the course of history, but it really does. Whether or not you decide to follow Jesus in your life and grow, it really does have a significant impact on the life and the world around you. And it's evident by just a lot of the fact of us sitting here today. You know, for me, I guess my parents are here. They probably don't like that I'm calling them out, but you know, my parents, you know, they were raised in their family. They decided to follow Jesus and to do their best to grow in character and do their best to be his student. And then when I was born, they were able to teach me that same way and show me his love, and that influenced and shaped my life. And then, you know, then my life begins to impact other people, and it continues to grow and grow and grow. Like, sometimes we don't know the amount of impact some of the decisions we can make have. You know, if my mom's parents didn't decide to follow Jesus, you know, who knows where I would be at in my life. And so sometimes we can think like, again, we have this idea in our culture that is like the whole self-improvement thing, and it's kind of just like, just get better for the sake of getting better. But like, Jesus is calling us as a church to something much deeper, where if we all together will continue to press forward and grow in these things, like, we're going to be specific about them because there's probably something in your life that God is like going to be teaching you about that is going to be really hard to change. But if we all work in this together, it's really significantly going to impact all of our relationships with each other, and it's going to help the world around us, which doesn't know Jesus. It's going to help them see God, and it's going to impact history. Okay, we're going to shift now to the how. So the why is very important for the world around us, for your own life, and for the people around us. And now we're going to shift to the how. The first thing is proactive. Be proactive. Okay, when you're like a kid and you need to grow in something, not when you need to grow. When you're a kid, you just do grow, right? Okay, like physically you grow. Like, we have a bunch of the youth guys are like all crazy taller than me right now, you know, and they weren't when I started interning here, right? So when you're a kid, you grow physically. That's just like kind of how it happens. But for character and for becoming more like Christ, that doesn't just happen automatically. You have to be proactive. You have to decide that it's something that you want. You have to choose to be a student. Like another way you can think of it is like high school versus like going into university. Like, high school, you kind of just have to do it. You get through it, right? But if you want to be a real like dedicated student in university, that's something you have to sign up for. You have to say, okay, I'm going to pay the fees, I'm going to get the books, and I'm going to do this thing. And so for growing in character and for being a student of Jesus, becoming more like Christ, you have to be proactive. It has to be something that you are choosing to do. And so we're going to go through 3 main ways. And the second thing, too, is you have to be honest with yourself and you have to be honest with God. Okay, this is super, super important. We're going to read a verse here that talks about... Actually, Evan, could you skip down to verse 8 of that next section? It's talking about like our relationship with God and not like hiding our sin from him. So here he says, if we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. So we have to be really honest with ourselves and we have to be really honest with God, okay? If you take a look at yourself and you sort of say, oh, I'm not really doing anything wrong, I'm not really doing this wrong, like the only person that you are deceiving, the only person you are fooling is yourself. And so it's your choice. So if you claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. And then the next verse is, but if we confess our sins, he is faithful. God is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. And then again, he says in verse 10, if we claim we have not sinned, we make him out to be a liar, and his word is not in us. And so he actually says it's even more significant here. If we claim that we don't have sin, if we claim that we don't make mistakes, then we're actually making, not only are we fooling ourselves, but we're basically calling God a liar. We're saying that God is not telling the truth. And then really the result is that, the truth is not in us. We're in the wrong. His word is not in us. So we have to be really, really honest with ourselves, okay? And it's important to start here for these next steps, because the next steps, the purpose of the next steps are something that you can actually take and apply and do. And, this isn't something that you need to go and tell a whole bunch of people about. Like, maybe if you need help from some people, like, tell a couple people at the most. But, like, this is something between you and God. And so you can really take a deep dive and, like, really think about it. Be honest with yourself. If this is something you want to do. Okay, so the first thing is clarify / confess, and be specific. Okay, so you got to clarify. And so if you have your notes right now, you can write these down, and I'll just give you a second. Clarify, what is something that I need to grow in? What is something that God is clearly teaching me that I need to change? And you can think about it now. If it's something that stands out to you, you can write it down. If it's something you need more time later, you can pray about it. But so clarify it. Think, okay, I need to grow in, maybe for me, I need to grow in, one thing that I struggle with is bitterness. I can really, hold on to things. And then I don't know how to necessarily deal with them and process them. And then it can affect me and the way I view people, and then also the relationships around me. So that would be one thing. That's one thing I know I need to work on, right? So clarify something and then confess. Admit to God that the way that you're living, the way that you're doing this particular thing, the way that you're viewing this thing is the wrong way. So that's the first step. And be specific with something. Okay, once you have that thing, and just focus on one thing right now, because we don't want to get overwhelmed with a million different things we have to change, but just one. Then we're going to go on to step 2. Study and pray. And write it down. Okay, you may have already written it down. But, write it down. We'll just use the bitterness example. Okay, bitterness. Write it down. Now, study and pray. Okay, so I chose to put study in here instead of, just read your Bible. Study, the way we were talking, about the student earlier who wants to become a better carpenter. Go into your Bible and, read examples of people who, what's the alternative to bitterness? Well, forgiveness would be one of those things, right? So I need to go and I need to look at examples of people in the Bible who were shown forgiveness or shown mercy, or examples where God was showing forgiveness. And looking at, maybe I'm going to go into one of the Gospels and I'm going to look at Jesus' life and see where he showed mercy. What did he teach about forgiveness? What did he teach about bitterness? And really, take some time to study the Bible in what it is calling us to do to change that particular thing. And then pray about it. Pray about that particular thing that you are wrestling with, that you're not very good at, and ask God to help you. So yeah, that's step number 2. Study it and then pray about it. And I have here, figure out what you need to leave behind and what you need to be more like. In Ephesians, when he was talking about putting off the old self and putting on the new self, it gives us a good framework for kind of what we're trying to do. And he gave a list of things there. He said, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you. Okay, so put away the way that you're doing things that is wrong. Put away the bitterness and the wrath and the anger and all these things. And then he says, instead of that, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. Okay, so yeah, figuring out what you need to leave behind and then what you need to be more like. And then step 3, just do it. This is the third step. You could do all the steps before, and they could more or less be completely useless if you didn't come to this step. Just do it. You must take action. Well, actually, you don't have to. Nobody's forcing you to grow in character. Remember, this is a choice that you have. It's a choice that you have. You can look at where your life is going, and you can choose whether or not you want to be on the way towards Jesus that is moving more towards life, real life for the people around you and for yourself. Or you can choose to, continue in the things that are negatively influencing the people around you. So yeah, just do it. So if you want to actually grow in this, you must take action. Okay, so stop doing what is bad, start doing what is good was a short little paraphrase there. But yeah, just do it. And the truth is, like when we go about this, you are bound to fail a lot. Like you might pick this thing, you might have something written down. Like some of the things that God calls us to change in our lives, you might struggle and battle against it. You might struggle and battle against it your whole life. It might be something maybe that takes like 6 years for you to be a little bit better at it. Like imagine like fighting 6 years to, be more, have more self-control or to be more patient with the people around you. Like some of these things, they might take a long time for us to learn. And so we're going to fail at it a lot, but it doesn't mean we should stop trying. It doesn't mean that we should give up on it or just say, okay, it's too hard, it's too difficult. We gotta be patient and we gotta keep enduring. So you're bound to fail a lot. And so ask for help and try again. You can't do it alone. That's one of the reasons why, we're talking about character in this church work series. That's why we have the church. Find some people around you, like a couple, and ask them for help. Like somebody who like, okay, I know this person, they seem particularly merciful and gracious to people. Like I need to spend more time with them. I need to learn more from them in order to grow in this. So try again, ask for help. And then finally, Jesus gives us grace to try again. So in 1 John chapter 2, after he talks about, confessing our sin and all that, he says this, "My dear children, I write this to you so that you will not sin. But if anybody does sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous one. He is the atoning sacrifice for our sins, and not only for ours, but also for the sins of the whole world." This is the ultimate hope and the reason we actually even have a starting place. And I actually missed the one of my notes here at the beginning of the how. How do we do this? It's actually completely impossible for us to do this, to become more like Jesus without God. If we try to do it on our own, it's actually completely impossible. And we have, we all have made so many mistakes, and we all have a lot of sin. And John's goal in writing this is so that we're not going to sin and that we do actually grow. But he says, don't worry, because Jesus has already paid the price for all of the sin that we have ever done. And not only mine, not only ours in this room, but the whole world. It's already been paid for. And so God gives us this it's this unbelievable opportunity to just continue to try again, to continue to grow, to continue to keep on going each morning, right? It's not just you try once, you fail at it, you're done. You're out of the family, you missed your shot, you didn't get it. It's just it's all over now. No, Jesus has come and he has died for us. And he's paid the price for our sin. And so there's no consequence that we hold for ourselves anymore from God for our sin, because it's all been paid for by Jesus. And so that's, I guess, really ultimately the first step. And so if you don't have a relationship with God, that's where you need to start. You need to turn to Jesus and realize that there's nothing that we can do on our own about our sin, and we have to go to Jesus. We have to accept that sacrifice. We have to accept that he's paid the price for all of the mistakes that we've made. And for those of us who are in a relationship with Jesus, it's a reminder to keep on turning back to him. Like, remember that each day. As you're going through this process of growing in character, remember God's mercy. Remember his sacrifice for you. Remember what he went through so that you could have like another shot at trying to get better at this thing, right? Remember the mercy that he's given us. Okay, let's bring up the slide there with those 4 notes, and we'll just quickly run over them again for the practical ones. So be honest with yourself and God. Clarify and confess. Study and pray, and then do it. You must take action. And then, of course, continue to trust in Jesus and the grace that he's given us to try again and again and again and again, because we're going to need a lot of grace to do this. Okay, I hope you're inspired. I hope you take some of the action steps, and I hope you have maybe written down some things or spend some time afterwards to write down something and actually use it in your life this next week to try and grow with God's grace in some area in your life. I'm going to pray now, and then we'll have the worship team come back up.